Real Madrid, the legend born from rejection. Part 1. The rejection that changed history. If that rejection letter had never arrived, perhaps the world would never have known the name Real Madrid. The story begins in the heart of Spain, Madrid. In the early spring of 1902, football was still a strange and foreign game, played mostly by English workers and a few university students. A group of young men, passionate about this new sport, gathered regularly in parks, dusty fields, and even on the edges of factories after work to kick around an old ball. Their dream? To be recognized, to join official tournaments, to represent Madrid with pride. In May 1902, Spain was preparing for the coronation of King Alfonso XIII. A football tournament called the Copa de la Coronation was organized to celebrate the occasion. Excited and hopeful, the young men submitted their request to participate in the tournament. The response? A firm no. They were not a recognized club. They had no formal registration, no stadium, and no sponsor. For most people, that would have been the end, but not for them. That night, as rain fell on the rooftops of Madrid, the group gathered in a small room lit by a single oil lamp. Anger, disappointment, and determination filled the air. Julian Palacios, the quiet leader of the group, stood up. If they won't let us play, we'll build our own club. We'll create something they cannot ignore. On March 6, 1902, the Madrid Football Club was born. No money, no field, no support. Just a name, a dream, and a mission to never be ignored again. They began by organizing their own matches. Word spread quickly across Madrid. A team had been born, not out of glory, but out of pride and rejection. This was just the beginning. World didn't know it yet, but history had started turning its pages, and at the center of it would be a club named Real Madrid. Part 2. The first match in a wound that never yelled. Spring sun gleamed over the dusty outskirts of Madrid. Just weeks after its foundation, Madrid Football Club prepared for its first match. There were no grandstands, no cheering fans, only the players, some curious locals, and a makeshift field marked by coats and sticks. The opposing team was well organized, more experienced, with matching kits and real cleats. Madrid FC, on the other hand, wore mismatched shirts, and many played in worn-out shoes. But they had something else. Heart. From the first whistle, it was clear. The other team was stronger. The passes were tighter, the defense impenetrable. Madrid FC fought hard, but by halftime, they were down 0-3. Tempers flared. One of Madrid's players, a tall defender named Ernesto, was mocked for slipping on the rough ground. "Go back to the factories," one opponent jeered. That insult struck deep. These weren't just young men playing a game. They were working-class dreamers, trying to prove they belonged. In the second half, Madrid fought with raw determination. They scored one goal, their first ever, and the roar from there. Small crowd echoed across the open field. Final score, 1-4. A loss, but it was more than that. It was a lesson. A bruise that reminded them how far behind they were and how far they needed to go. After the match, the team sat in silence, jerseys soaked in sweat and pride. Palacios finally spoke. "They laughed at us. And today, maybe they had the right to. But tomorrow, we give them no reason to." That night, they began planning. Training schedules, recruitment, equipment. They were not just players anymore. They were builders of something greater. Madrid FC would rise, not in comfort, but through struggle, because that first defeat, it didn't break them. It built them. Part 3. From outsiders to chalengers. The months passed, and Madrid FC transformed. Gone were the days of disorganization and mismatched kits. In their place was a team that trained rigorously, played with structure, and had found purpose beyond the game. They began attracting more players, not stars, but fighters. Students, factory workers, and former military men who shared one thing: a burning need to prove themselves. Each evening, under fading daylight, they trained tirelessly. Their matches became local events, drawing growing crowds. Whispers turned into applause. Applause turned into belief. In 1903, Madrid FC made a bold move. They entered the regional tournament, the Campeonato de Madrid. Few gave them a chance. Their first match was a surprise. A 2-1 victory over a more experienced side. Then came another. And another. The final match was against Club Espanyol de Madrid, the favorites. Madrid FC fought as if the city's pride was in their boots. They won 3-2 in a match that saw 2 players injured and 1 red card. Madrid FC were now regional champions. The newspapers changed their tone. From shadows to spotlight, one headline read, "A club of heart and hope." That same year, they competed in their first Copa del Rey, the most prestigious tournament in Spain. They reached the final. Their opponents, Athletic Club Bilbao, the giants of Spanish football. The match was fierce. Bilbao played with precision, Madrid with passion. But passion wasn't enough. They lost 2-3. Another heartbreak. But this time, they didn't weep. They stood taller. Because now they knew they belonged. From factory fields to national finals, Madrid FC had transformed. No longer underdogs, but challengers. And challengers never stopped chasing the crown. Part 4. The Royal Arreciagen Iguain. The year was 1920. Spain was evolving, and so was its love for football. The sport that once drew only whispers in dusty fields was now filling stadiums. The air in Madrid buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Madrid FC, now almost 2 decades old, had become a name that stirred emotions. Their victories, their losses, their resilience, it had built them a reputation that couldn't be ignored. But what happened next would change everything. King Alfonso, 13, known for his fascination with modern sports and admiration for discipline, had taken notice. Reports of Madrid's discipline, unity, and growth had reached royal ears. On a spring morning, a letter arrived at the club's modest office. It bore the royal seal. Inside, a decree. Madrid Football Club was henceforth granted the title Real. Royal, the name was reborn. Real Madrid Club de FTB, It wasn't just an honor. It was history, from muddy backlots to royal recognition. From ignored applications to royal appointments, players cried. Founders who were still alive, like Palacios, were speechless. They had fought for respect. Now they wore a crown. The club's crest was redesigned to include a regal crown, shimmering gold atop the iconic M, a new identity with ancient roots. But the title came with expectations. Real Madrid was no longer just a football team. It was a symbol. Of Madrid. Of Spain. And with that crown came pressure. Fans demanded more. The nation watched closer. And the players, many of whom had grown up poor, now carried not just jerseys, but legacy. Real Madrid began investing in facilities. In 1924, they inaugurated the Estadio Chamartín, a massive leap forward. A proper home. Attendance soared. Local talent was recruited. For the first time, the club felt complete, but rivals were growing too. Athletic Bilbao, Barcelona, clubs that viewed Real's crown with envy, and so began a new chapter, the era of battles not just on the pitch, but in identity. Royal versus rebel. Tradition versus revolution. But Real Madrid was ready. They had a crown now, and they intended to defend it. Part 5. The war that almost destroyed everything. The dark clouds spread over Spain. Civil war erupted. Brother against brother. Ideology against ideology. Towns burned. Streets emptied. And football vanished. Real Madrid, now a symbol of pride and tradition, was suddenly left in ruin. The club's president fled. The Chamartín Stadium was repurposed as a field hospital. Offices were looted. Records were burned. Trophies vanished. Players were drafted. some willingly, some by force. Many would never return. Triana, one of Madrid's brightest young stars, was among the first casualties. His death shook the club to its core. He had just turned 23. Other players went missing. Some were imprisoned. Others fought on different sides of the conflict. Former teammates, now enemies. Friends turned ghosts. There were no matches, no chants, no celebrations. But in the silence, in the wreckage, something endured. A few members of the club, too old or too wounded to fight, stayed behind. They met secretly, guarding what little remained: a scarf, a torn match program, a single ball signed by old teammates. They told stories, shared memories, and swore one thing: when peace returns, so will Real. 3 long years passed. When the war ended in 1939, Madrid was a different city. Scarred, quiet, but hopeful. From the ashes, Real Madrid began again. Not with goals or fans, but with survivors. The stadium was rebuilt, slowly, piece by piece. Players returned, some limping, others broken in spirit, but they returned. And when the first post-war match was played in Chamartin, it wasn't just a game. It was a resurrection. Real Madrid had lost everything, but not its soul. And from that moment on, they played not just for victory, but for those who never made it back. Part 6. Santiago Bernabéu, the architect of GLOY. In 1943, the club chose a man to lead them out of the shadows: Santiago Bernabéu. He was no stranger to Real Madrid. He had been a player, a captain, and a war survivor. But above all, he was a man of vision. Bernabéu didn't just want to restore Real Madrid. He wanted to elevate it to heights no Spanish club had ever reached. The first step? Rebuilding from the ground up. He oversaw the construction of a brand new stadium, bigger, bolder, and more ambitious than anything Spain had seen. In 1947, it opened its gates, the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium, named in his honor. While other clubs settled, Bernabéu dreamed. He created a youth academy to nurture talent from the streets of Madrid. He scouted players across Europe. And for the first time, Real Madrid began to think internationally. Bernabéu changed how football was run. He modernized the club's finances, brought in full-time staff, hired coaches with revolutionary ideas. But even with new systems, Real Madrid still lacked one thing: global greatness. And that would arrive soon, in the form of a player who would change everything. But before that, the foundation had to be set. By the end of the 1940s, Real Madrid had recovered. By the early 1950s, it was waiting for destiny to knock on the door. And destiny had a name: Alfredo Di Stefano. Part 7. Di Stefano, the man who changed everything. A storm was brewing, not on the pitch, but behind closed doors. Real Madrid and FC Barcelona were both in pursuit of the same player, Alfredo Di Stefano. The Argentine forward had dazzled fans in South America, and word of his brilliance spread like wildfire across Europe. Barcelona believed they had secured him. Contracts were drafted. A presentation was planned. Then, at the last moment, chaos. Through a complex series of negotiations, involving rival federations and clever maneuvering, Real Madrid swooped in and signed him. Barcelona cried foul. Newspapers erupted. Politicians whispered. But it was done. Di Stefano was wearing white. And with his first match, he silenced every critic. He wasn't just fast. He wasn't just skilled. He was everywhere. Midfield, defense, attack. He played as if he were 3 men. Under his leadership, Real Madrid transformed. They won the Spanish League. Then again. And again. But Di Stefano's true legacy began in 1955, when UEFA created a new competition, the European Cup. It was a tournament to find the best team on the continent. And Real Madrid dominated it. In 1956, they lifted the first ever European Cup. Di Stefano scored. In 1957, they defended their title. Then in 1958, 1959, 1960. 5 consecutive European Cups, a feat never repeated. Di Stefano, along with players like Paco Gento and Ferenc Puskás, turned Real Madrid into the most feared team in the world. Crowds packed the Bernabeu. Millions tuned into radios. Children across Europe began dreaming in white. Real Madrid wasn't just a football club anymore. It was an empire, and Di Stefano was its king. But even kings cannot reign forever. As the 1960s approached, the club faced a new challenge. How do you follow perfection? That answer would come, but not without struggle. Part 8. The Empire expanded. The 1960s arrived, and with them came winds of change. Real Madrid, having conquered Europe 5 times in a row, stood at the summit of world football. But staying there would prove harder than reaching it. Alfredo Di Stefano, now in his 30s, was still a force, but age had begun to creep in. Paco Gento remained blisteringly fast, but others from the Golden Squad were retiring. Slowing, fading. The club needed reinvention. And so Santiago Bernabéu acted. He launched an aggressive new recruitment policy, focusing on young Spanish talents and foreign stars with untapped potential. In 1966, a new generation delivered. Real Madrid won their 6th European Cup, this time without Di Stefano. It was the era of Los Yee, named after the Beatles-inspired youth movement sweeping across Spain. These new heroes, Piri, Amancio Zoco, Grosso, carried the legacy forward. Their win in Brussels against Partizan Belgrade was seen as validation. The club was more than one man. It was a machine of greatness, fueled by tradition, but adaptable. At home, Madrid dominated La Liga. Their rivalry with Barcelona intensified. El Clásico became not just a match, but a clash of ideologies, politics, and pride. Every victory was savored, every defeat remembered. Off the pitch, Real Madrid began to modernize even further. The Bernabeu Stadium expanded. Training methods evolved. The club began thinking not just as a football team, but as a global institution. By the end of the 1960s, Real Madrid was no longer just a dominant club. It was the beating heart of Spanish football. And yet, a storm loomed on the horizon. As the 1970s approached, so did new threats, emerging European powers, tactical revolutions, a growing demand for flair over function. Real Madrid had built an empire, but now they had to defend it in a world that was changing faster than ever. Part 9. The Shadow of Tarayanesition. The 1970s began with uncertainty. Santiago Bernabéu, still president, was aging. His vision remained sharp, but the world around him was evolving quickly. Football was entering a new era, faster, more tactical, more commercial. Real Madrid struggled to keep pace. The Yee generation, once youthful and fearless, began to age. Their legs slowed, their confidence wavered. New European giants like Bayern Munich and Ajax emerged, playing total football and dominating continental stages. Madrid's performances dipped. In Europe, they suffered early eliminations. At home, rivals clawed back dominance. FC Barcelona signed Johan Cruyff, a revolutionary player, and with him, shifted Spanish football's power dynamic. Worse still, in 1973, Alfredo Di Stefano returned not as a player, but as coach of Valencia. When he defeated Madrid on their own turf, the wounds were more than tactical. They were emotional. Fans began to question, were Real Madrid's best years behind them? But Bernabéu refused to surrender to nostalgia. He doubled down on youth investment. He scouted across Spain, looking for the next generation to wear white. And in 1978, just as the club was navigating this difficult transition, tragedy struck. Santiago Bernabéu died, the man who had rebuilt the club from war, who dreamed of stadiums, trophies, and glory. Who made Madrid the standard of excellence? He was gone. The entire football world mourned. Even Barcelona fans held moments of silence. But amid the grief, the club remembered his greatest lesson. Legends don't vanish, they evolve. And though the transition was painful, Real Madrid would rise again, not because of a name, but because of the unshakable foundation Bernabeu left behind. Part 10. The name that never dies. The 1980s dawned, and with them came a question that loomed large. Who are we without Santiago Bernabeu? Real Madrid stood at a crossroads. Other clubs had more money, more innovation, flashier stars. But Madrid had something deeper: identity. The 1980s brought with them La Quinta del Buitre, a generation of homegrown players who would redefine Spanish football. Emilio Butragueño, Mitchell, Sanchez, Martin Vasquez, and Pardeza. 5 boys who had grown up watching legends. 5 boys who were now asked to become them. They didn't disappoint. Under new leadership, Real Madrid surged again. They won 5 consecutive La Liga titles. Their play was fluid, elegant, and fearsome. But the European Cup still eluded them. It wasn't until the late 1990s that the next great rebirth came. The club entered a new era. Galacticos, Florentino Perez, a businessman with big dreams, took charge. He wanted more than footballers. He wanted icons. Luis Figo, Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldo, Beckham, Raúl, Roberto Carlos. Names that echoed across continents. The Galacticos brought drama, headlines, pressure, but also magic. In 2002, on the club's 100th anniversary, Zidane scored one of the most iconic goals in football history, a left-footed volley in the Champions League final that sealed Real Madrid's 9th European Cup. Madrid was reborn again, but even that wasn't the end. In the 2010s, under manager Zinedine Zidane himself, Real Madrid made history yet again. 3 consecutive Champions League titles, a feat never done before in the modern era. Cristiano Ronaldo, Sergio Ramos, Luka Modric, Karim Benzema, new legends for a new generation. From muddy fields in 1902 to lifting the world's most coveted trophies in front of billions, Real Madrid had never stopped evolving. It wasn't just about winning. It was about proving again and again that rejection fuels greatness. That identity endures. That legends are never born fully formed. They are shaped by time, pain, passion, and persistence. And so the name lives on, more than a club, more than a crown, a symbol, a story, a name that never dies. Real Madrid.